Someone stole my credit card and bought an iPad, but had it shipped to my house. What's your best stupid criminal story? A friend of mine had his backpack with his $1,400 engineering laptop in it stolen while at the campus food court. I had a weird gut feeling it would turn up on Craigslist or somewhere similar. Every day for a week I checked Craigslist. Exactly 1 week later, I found the laptop. This extremely stupid criminal took a picture of the laptop screen with my friend's login name. Yeah, very stupid criminal. So I contacted the seller immediately via email and he responded within 20 minutes. I said I'd like to buy the laptop from him. We agreed to meet at a nearby parking lot later that day. Next, we called the cops. They agreed to set up a sting on the thief. One of the officers pretended to be a buyer and approached the thief. The officer acted as if he was examining the laptop, but was actually looking for the serial number. Boom, it had a matching serial number and they arrested this dumb shit. A week ago. 4 months later, the guy was proven guilty, and to my knowledge, is spending a year in prison. Plus, my buddy finally got his laptop back. Now I have a full-on justice boner. When I worked at Guitar Center, a couple came into the store. The guy left and the girl stayed, checking out guitars. A sales guy saw her holding 2 higher-end Gibson Les Pauls down by the low-end side of the wall by the BC Riches. He asked if he could help and she asked a question about the guitars. He took one from her and went to check something on it. Once he was about 20 yards away, she bolted. She sprinted down the hallway to the warehouse, past the bathrooms and busted out the emergency exit door that lets out behind the store. 2 guys took chase and made it out in time to see a car squealing around the corner of the building. We really had nothing to go on. I'm P because having a $3,500 guitar stolen cuts into my bonus and it just overall sucks to have your crew bummed about the theft, etc. Cut to 1 week later. I'm running my morning meeting and I'm told I have an important phone call. I take the call and my friend is telling me I have to check my email. I do and there's a link from him to a Craigslist ad. The mother posted a photo of himself holding the guitar. I know it's ours. I just know it. He describes it inaccurately and is asking $1,000. Gives a BS reason for it not having a case. We need the serial number. We need that freaking number. Another manager calls him pretending to be a collector. He casually asks for the serial number, saying he's only looking for guitars from certain years. He calls it a date code but I don't think the guy is buying it. He tells him he'll call him back with the number but never does. We're antsy. We call the cops. We form a plan. Another of our guys calls and tells this dude he just has to have this guitar. He'll come meet him with cash. Guy agrees. They meet at a gas station. Dude walks up with this gorgeous $3,500 Les Paul in a $35 gig bag. The BS. For a bit and my dude asks to see the guitar. He looks it over and checks the serial. It's ours. Yet man, this is exactly what I was hoping for. Great guitar. Then he waves across the street to the cop car that was waiting around the corner. Dude is like a deer in headlights. Cops arrest him and even let us leave with the guitar. Back at the store my friend's phone rings. It's the guy's number. He answers. Girl, were you meeting my BF about a guitar? Friend, yeah, I sure did. Girl, oh, he's not back yet. Are you still with him? Friend, nope, I'm already home. Girl, oh, weird, okay, well, did you get the guitar? Friend, I sure did. I'm holding it right now. Thanks. Girl, oh great, thanks. Have a good day. 1 hour later she called back. Didn't bother to answer. She left a very nasty voicemail with a lot of swearing. Priceless. I hear he threw her under the bus in court and they both were in hot crap over the whole thing. Priceless. Love the justice. My parents were driving home and saw their second car coming the other way. Turned around, followed it, and stole it back with their spare set of keys. And yes, obviously then reported the matter to the police. Stupid girl found my debit card after I had dropped it on campus. Took it to Wilson's Leather and bought her boyfriend a leather jacket. When my card didn't have enough on it to pay the whole cost of the jacket, she used her own debit card to finish paying it off. All on video. Mine was stolen once. The person ordered about $75 worth of pizza and had it delivered to their house. I visited the pizza place, said I needed a receipt for the pizza so my company would pay me back. They gave me a receipt showing the address they delivered it to. Turned it into the police in town and they were on the news 2 days later. Nice work, detective. Someone stole my credit card info and bought a copy of their credit report with it. I looked that mofo up on Facebook too, since the CC company somehow ended up sending me a full copy of his credit report during the investigation. And I was like, dude, poke him. We left our garage open a few years ago at night by accident. Apparently someone had been snooping around in there because everything was out of place in the morning, except for a solid gold bracelet laying on the ground outside the garage door. What did they steal? My freaking Razor scooter, man. I've got one. From this past weekend actually. I volunteer cleaning up a local park. It's called a park, but it has no facilities, no employees, etc. It's really more of a forest, and it doesn't get much official attention. Anyway, almost every day, I walk through, pick up trash, and ensure it's properly disposed of. It's a beautiful park and I like to keep it that way. So Sunday afternoon I found that someone had dumped a huge amount of construction debris in the park along one of the access roads. As I piled it up neatly, I found a receipt with a guy's name, address, and phone number, along with a description of his vehicle, including the make, model, mileage, and VIN. So I called the state park police and asked to speak with an officer, showed him the dumped trash, showed him the receipt I found, and made a formal complaint. He gave me the usual "we'll let you know if we need anything else from you." The officer called me last night to thank me for finding the receipt. He said they went and paid the guy a visit, found that vehicle in the driveway, and he answered the door. "Are you John Doe?" He said, "Yes, that's me." The officer said he insisted he knew nothing about illegal dumping. No surprise. And when it seemed like the interrogation was going nowhere, he pulled out the receipt. And then the guy said, "That's not my name." He already said it was him. The officer told me that when he said, "Okay sir, if you're not going to properly identify yourself, you're under arrest for obstructing a government official, a class A misdemeanor, and we'll fingerprint you at the station and find out who you really are." Suddenly the guy's story changed. He was the guy on the receipt. That was his truck, and he dumped the trash in the park. The officer even said that the guy said, "I never thought I'd get caught," and he wouldn't have either, if it wasn't for us meddling kids. TLDR. Guy dumps construction debris in park, leaves receipt with name, address, phone number, make, model, color, mileage of vehicle and VIN. Guy lies about it when questioned by police, comes clean after confronted with receipt. Reminds me of Alice's restaurant. "Officer, I cannot tell a lie. I put that receipt at the bottom of the pile of trash." I've had this same thing happen about 8 years ago. The idiot used my debit card info to purchase a digital camera and computer parts, about $800 total, from Newegg, and then had them shipped to my address. Called up Wells Fargo as soon as I noticed the charge and they handled it fairly quickly. 3 days later I was refunded the purchase and returned the merchandise to Newegg as soon as it arrived. I considered myself pretty lucky that the miscreant used incredibly poor thievery technique. Someone stole my wife's debit card and used it for online gambling websites in Europe, and ended up winning. The winning automatically went right back onto her account. Jackpot. My soccer team was playing a game at a local park. During the game a sketchy looking guy runs through to pitch we are playing on, holding several cell phones. We soon realize that said valuables belong to us and begin chasing him. He probably thought that he has made a profit, stealing cell phones worth hundreds, until he looks back and sees 30 people chasing him down. When we caught him we took our valuables back and proceeded to beat the crap out of him. The thing is, our changing rooms are roughly 200 yards from the field, so why run directly past the people you've just robbed when you could easily sneak away? The first time my dad was on jury service, the case involved a criminal who tried to rob a jeweler's shop. This was probably in the UK in the early 50s, when police response was slower, and shops weren't as well protected as they are now. The shop had a burglar alarm, but the thief figured that he could just smash the front window, grab anything he could reach, and be long gone before the police showed up. Unfortunately, he didn't do his research properly. The shop was actually on the ground floor of an apartment block that was used to provide accommodation for young police officers. About a minute after the alarm went off, He found himself surrounded by 20 cops, and about 15 minutes after that he was in a cell. TLDR. Clueless burglar knocks over a shop next to police apartments. Jail time ensues. A friend of mine was mugged by some teenagers. He wore a fluffy jacket, so when the muggers frisked him they didn't find his mobile phone but got his cash. As they were leaving he heard them say that they were taking a taxi to a specific store. So, as soon as they had left it was easy for him to call the police, who made a broadcast to all taxi drivers. After that it was easy for the police to arrest the muggers. The world needs more fluffy jackets. I live in a third world country and my parents got a phone call from someone who first put a crying girl on the line and claimed they'd kidnapped me. I was with them at that time so they knew it was fake. The conversation went like this. Dad, that's weird. I don't have a daughter. Dumbass criminal. You don't? Oh. So do you have a son? Dad, number. Dumbass criminal. Oh. How about a younger sister? My dad hung up at this point. That happened to my mother. Someone somehow got a hold of her credit card number and proceeded to buy things. Not even things that were remotely close to what she likes. I think they bought an attachment to a muffler, a prepaid cell phone, and some CDs. All shipped to my mother. I don't think they were very good at crime. My friend's roommate also lifted my debit card to buy a lunch and dinner on a couple occasions. He works in an entirely different part of the state than my friend. My friend confronted him about it. He said, no, that wasn't me. My friend just asked him again and he admitted it. Still waiting on getting paid back, though. I'd report that to the police, by the way. In high school a girl's BlackBerry got stolen while she was at track practice. It was a huge scandal as the only people with access to her stuff were people on the track team. The person who stole her phone tried to set up his email on the phone, which sent an email to her saying, "Are you sure you want to change your email to Thiguous name?" At idiot.com. It ended up being a team captain who had gave the speech to the team, asking for the phone to be returned. This kid that was in my class in high school years back ran an operation on eBay selling those underbody nin light kits. You know, the balls that makes you look all fast and furious. Anyways, he makes a small fortune selling this stuff. The only problem was that when the customer received their product, it was just a picture of an car kit. This kid had apparently worded his description to confuse people into thinking they were buying the real thing. But in reality they were spending $200 on a piece of paper. A bunch of off people from around the country called our local police and he ended up getting arrested. I can't remember the charge, but he had tens of thousands of dollars to pay back, plus fines. The entire town shamed him, made fun of him for crying when the police interviewed him and everything. He was all over the news for a while. Reminds me of all those Xbox 360 boxes being sold, which were only the boxes. Some buddies of mine once broke into an ice cream truck and got busted just a few blocks away eating said ice cream. When I was 16 years old, some former friends broke into my basement. Among a couple of other random things, they stole my radio, which was a giant boombox, and my bike. They also stole a couple of sports collectibles that belonged to my stepfather. My stepfather was not the type of person you wanted to pee off. While he was never a violent person, but he had no problems with resorting to violence if need be. His sons, though, had hair-trigger tempers. It didn't take much for them to want to beat the crap out of someone. I'm P. My stepfather is about to lose his crap. He calls up his sons, who head over to the house. As they're about to pull in, they hear music. The kids who broke into my house were in the schoolyard 3 houses down from where I live, listening to my radio, and one is sitting on my bike. Beatings were issued. I had my iPod Touch stolen. The dude didn't seem clever when he started talking with his girlfriend on my Facebook. Figured who she was, talked with her, got her to talk with him. He lived far away apparently. Boom. Please tell me you seduced her, then called the cops. My dad is an ex-cop. He still knows and hangs out with most of the cops in town. After he retired, he bought a very large Ford pickup truck. Sorry, I don't know anything about truck models, and had a custom paint job done to it. Everybody knew this truck. Some idiot steals it, Bad enough he stole a truck with a custom paint job which is going to stick out like a sore thumb no matter where he goes, but the idiot decides to take it joyriding around town. Of course, once the cops get wind of this, they're all over it like flies on crap. Word spread quickly. If anyone sees JJ's truck, it was stolen. Nab the bastard. It's not like they had to look very hard. There were eagles painted on the back window, each door, and the hood. It's not like the truck was going to blend in with the rest of traffic, especially considering the owner is well known. The guy might as well have had a neon sign saying please arrest me floating over his head. He was busted the minute he drove by a cop, which didn't take very long. Someone got a credit card in my name, made purchases, but paid the balance on time. Usually it's not an accident that they choose to ship to your house. If billing shipping are the same, all the site needs to do is pass the usual fraud checks and do automatic avs on your address. Passes for billing. No need to scrutinize the shipping. The moment they pick an alternate shipping address, any competent store will give the order to a fraud analyst, and often merchant services of the card company is called to verify that it's an alternate shipping address they have on file. Then the thief calls the store and the courier and tries to get them to reroute in shipment, pretending to be you. Oh crap, I'm on vacation, etc. If that fails, they can try to trick the person in question to leave the package outside for them so they can pick it up from outside your house and drive away. If the thief lives locally, it's easy enough, especially if UPS drops packages while you're at work. They can go right up and take the package. That's what they tried to do with my CC, and that's the reason some carriers make sure you can't change your address once the shipment is on its way. A guy I know stole my bike once. 2 weeks later, however, he forgot who he stole it from and bragged off to me and several other people about how he stole it. I stole it back. They didn't make a mistake sending it to your address at all. It was fully intended. Most people won't have noticed that it had been charged to their credit card. They would have simply left the parcel outside and later the criminal would have picked it up. The criminal this way doesn't have to give an address out, which he could be linked to, nor does he have to show his face. The worst case scenario is that someone finds out, such as yourself, and all that they have given away is a phone number. I saw a guy get caught for stealing a bunch of Nutter Butters once. I used to live in a student rent, me, a friend, and a third guy whom neither of us knew. My friend and I went to Newcastle for a weekend on a visit, and when we returned, both my Xbox 360 and his PlayStation 3 were missing. We quizzed Guy 3 about it, and he claimed that he'd gone out one night, and the door was open when he came back. He said he hadn't contacted us as his phone was broken. That turned out to be a total lie. Naturally, we contacted the police, and the officer who came round inspected the door, and mentioned that there was no sign of forced entry anywhere in the house. A couple of days later, he left his door open whilst he went out. Neither of us totally believing his story. We decided to poke our heads round the door, to see if there was anything untoward. And what do we find? Yep, both consoles, plugged into his TV. We left the room, and didn't mention it to him when he came back. Instead, my friend went outside, and contacted the police to inform them that we'd found the perpetrator. About an hour later, he was being led out of the door in handcuffs. 2 hours later, his entire room was emptied out. We work dang fast when we want to, and in a pile of black sacks in the hallway. His father came by the next day to collect the stuff, and verbally abuse us for grassing, and we never heard from him again. To this day, we still laugh about the sheer audacity of stealing from someone you live with, and keeping the stolen items roughly 20 feet away. Till that, grassing is a UK term meaning to inform to the police about someone's unlawful actions. Grass or grasser is another name for informer. To grass up on someone is to inform on them. A good example of thieves picking the wrong person, or persons in this case, to rob. I was working as a manager at an ice rink at the time. One night during an adult league game, I heard a ruckus coming from the other side of my office wall. These are not thin walls, so I went to investigate. When I walked through the door that separates the lobby from the rink, the first thing I notice is that neither team is on the ice. The score was 3-3 and the referees looked a little frightened. Since the game had recently started, this was very odd. At that moment, the door to locker room 1 flew open so hard that one of the hinges broke. Out of the door flew the limp body of a 20-something-year-old man with baggy jeans and a long white and bloody shirt, followed closely by his flat-brimmed hat and his two equally humbled buddies. This is what went down. At around the beginning of the second period, both teams noticed a group of 3 thugs slip in the back door and start looting the wallets, cell phones from the players' clothes. This was a common problem at the rink and players are advised not to bring in valuables. Common a problem as it was, both teams were on high alert from being robbed in this way just a week prior. The captains had the game stopped and called a timeout. This is when things got ugly. Imagine the look on these crooks' faces when an army of 18 heavily padded, enraged men with 5-foot-long weapons came storming into the small room to find them with a pile of cell phones, wallets and watches. The first guy had come to by the time the cops arrived. The other 2 weren't knocked out and actually attempted to run. A quick crack on the shin with a hockey stick was all that was needed to keep them from leaving. The players all gathered around the thieves in an impenetrable circle until the cops came. I spoke to the player who admitted that he knocked the first guy out cold with a chop in the dome. He said that when his wallet was stolen a week before, it left with the only copy of his favorite picture of his daughter who died a year earlier. This guy was in his 30s, so the daughter couldn't have been very old. He had a feeling he would go to jail, but I decided not to pass this info to the cops once I saw the guy come to. The cops asked the players if they wanted them to go to jail. One guy chimed in and said I think they've had enough. The rest of the players disagreed and said no they haven't. Frick em. Off they went. TLDR. Don't steal from hockey players, especially not 18 of them. Girl steals my sister's BlackBerry at a bar. 3 weeks later a friend who has my sister on BBM asks why her name is different. The girl didn't wipe the phone and changed her BBM name to her full name complete with a picture of her and her skeezy boyfriend. I then went on Facebook, found this girl by her name. Her display picture on FB was the same one she used on BBM. Add her. She accepts. On her Facebook is her cell phone and home number, and status is claiming new BlackBerry. Add my PIN, which was my sister's PIN. We called her up, told her the options she had, and we had the phone by the end of the day. As we walked away I looked at her and said, not to sound preachy, but you should probably be careful of who you accept on Facebook. She blank stares at me as I sit in the car. I think that's the moment she realized I was the guy whose friend request she accepted. Joke's on you though, after all that work all you got was a crappy BlackBerry. AMEX is a little overzealous in their anti-fraud practices. I just purchased about $1,200 of parts for my new home computer rig from newegg.com. I get a call about 30 minutes later from AMEX asking if it was me. I said, yes. What kind of thief would send computer parts to the billing address? His response was, you would be surprised. Incredulous. I love those calls. It makes me feel pretty secure if something does happen to go wrong. This story begins at around 3 AM outside my apartment complex. We lived in a corner suite ground floor apartment. I heard a rustling and looked out my window. Guy was dragging around a box of donated clothing in the parking lot, occasionally stopping to throw out some ladies' clothing, which I assume it all was. Now, the next morning, GF and I got up and went to work. I worked only a few blocks away, so I walked. I passed the same guy sleeping on the corner of the street. I walked by not thinking anything about it. Around 10 AM I get a call from the landlord saying my apartment got broken into. After I passed this guy and got out of sight, he got up and knocked on the neighbor's windows. She looked out and he told her that he forgot his key and wanted to be let in. She said no, frick off. 2 minutes after that she heard the guy knocking on our window. Apparently since nobody answered he busted the glass and let himself in. I guess she didn't hear this. After tearing our place apart and stuffing our valuables in a laundry basket, he walked up and down the hallway screaming. He was confronted by somebody and said he was looking for his girlfriend's apartment. After this encounter, the guy called a cab. You heard me, a cab. Neighbor saw the cab pull up and the guy get in with the laundry basket of crap, so she wrote down the cab number and called the cops. Cops called the cabbie and asked if the guy looked like he had stolen a bunch of stuff. Cabbie said yes. Cops asked cabbie for where he was being dropped off and picked him up there. Best part, he pleaded not guilty and made me go to court. He left his shoes behind and took mine. I have size 14 feet. He has size 7. The thing that was the nail in the coffin, I am told, was that I mentioned to a cop after I collected everything was that I was still missing my bacon flavored toothpicks. The cops found them in his pants pocket when taking my Xbox 360. Rather than disconnect the network cable, he ripped it out, leaving the end in the 360. I don't know how hard he must have had to rip a network cable in half. GF was missing some of her birth control pills. We never found them, assumed eaten. After everything, we only lost one sword and one beer. Get one awesome story. Collateral damage. One beer and one sword. I think you're the winner. My roommate and I were involved in a hit and run car accident in our own driveway. It was the middle of the night and I had just gotten home and just crawled into bed when I heard a car peeling out on our road. Then I heard him crash into something. I ran to my window only to watch the bastard drive away. I went outside and saw he had run into our cars and sandwiched them together. Luckily his car was such a junker the rusty wire holding his front license plate to his bumper broke off, leaving his license plate behind. I had a guy get trapped under my rental property trying to steal copper. In his haste he cut through a pipe and a supporting beam. That part of the house collapsed on him. I showed up a day later to him screaming for help. Despite being caught red-handed with a hacksaw under my house, he still denied he was doing anything illegal. One of my friend's co-workers worked at a petrol station. One night when he wasn't working, he put on a mask and robbed it with his friend. He demanded the extra cigarettes which were located under the counter from the clerk. The clerk just replied there weren't any cigarettes there. He realized yes there are. I know because I work here. Family friends had their credit card stolen. The guy ordered a pizza with it delivered. Caught quickly. Also an idiot friend in high school found a credit card and put it on his eBay account. Brought Jessica Simpson face wash or something stupid like that with it. I had the exact same thing happen to me, except instead of an iPad, my dumb identity thief bought a 4-pack of cheap knockoff Nintendo DS styluses. Amazon didn't even want them back. They gave me a refund. I cancelled my debit card, and I just threw the crappy styluses away. I talked to the cops too, but they didn't seem to give a crap. I used to work at a Puma retail store in a mall. We used to get 60% discounts on almost everything in the store as well as 5 jackets, shirts, pants, shoes, and accessories for free every couple months. This was mainly because they wanted us to advertise their clothes and it served as a uniform as well. The only items we wouldn't get for free or discount was the super popular stuff because they pretty much sold themselves. One of our employees found some empty shoe boxes in the back while organizing the stockroom and brought it to our manager's attention. The next day one of our seasonal employees walks into work wearing the missing shoes. When asked where he got the shoes, he said he bought them from the store, and then he was asked to ring him up. Well, the manager checked the register records and sure enough there were no transactions for the shoes. Manager ends up asking the seasonal employee if they can search his car, and he lets them dumb, and they find a bunch of other stolen merchandise from the store. TLDR. Employee steals from store and wears stolen merchandise into work. My house was burglarized 5 years ago. They took my PlayStation, but not the power converter. Also, when they took the sheets of my parents' bed, presumably looking for money under the mattress, they put the sheets on top of my mom's $1,200 photo equipment. My good friend Cole works at a gas station in the city. One day a very brawn, yet stupid man walks up to the counter and pulls out a 12-gauge shotgun, points it directly at my friend's face, and orders him to put all the cash from the register into his bag. If I was Carl, I would have just done what he said, but instead, he stupidly grabs the barrel of shotgun, tussles with the man a little bit and ends up getting the gun from him. The man quickly runs out of the store, leaving his shotgun. Cole just decides that instead of calling the police he's just going to keep the shotgun and put this all behind him. Later that day, the same man comes back, asking if he can have his shotgun back. Cole was so amazed at the stupidity of this man for coming back, that instead of just saying no, he now decides to get the police involved and tricks the man into staying while he calls the police. Man gets arrested. Carl is a hero. My old crazy roommate stole my credit card and used it to subscribe to Entertainment Weekly under a pseudonym. She also bought a tank of gas and something worth 4.32 at the grocery store, and then she put it back in my wallet. She then later accused me of stealing her credit card and purchasing a subscription of Cat Fancy. I plead the fifth. I'm a fraud prosecutor, so I'm really getting a kick out of these replies. I prosecuted a guy for eBay fraud. He had been selling car parts, spoilers, fenders, etc. and not delivering, which is fraudulent because he didn't have the parts, and he'd spent the money. He entered a guilty plea where he would do some jail time, and then he would be on probation. His terms prohibited him from doing anything on eBay while on probation. I later found out that while he was in jail, he'd bragged to some others about his exploits on eBay. They encouraged him to step it up beyond bodywork and go for whole cars where there'd be even more money. So his first week on probation, he decides to answer a newspaper ad selling a car. He goes and takes lots of pictures, but does not buy the car. He then takes the pictures and lists the car he doesn't own on eBay. The auction eventually closes for substantially less than the price listed in the newspaper. Of course, that doesn't matter, right? He calls the newspaper guy and asks for a test drive, taking the car to the lot where the eBay buyer is waiting. The guy wants payment up front and will be gone before the eBay buyer and newspaper seller figure out they've been had. Except that the car is a fairly uniquely modified Mercedes. It just happened to be owned by one of the top officials in the police department. Despite the fact that this all takes place in a large city, someone else in the department spotted the car while surfing eBay. He called the official, who was surprised to learn that the car he'd listed in the newspaper was for sale on eBay. The official had detectives bid on and win the auction in a hastily arranged undercover sting. So when our hero took his test drive and arrived at the lot where the eBay buyer was waiting with a check, he walked straight into a set of handcuffs, with all of his emails in evidence and calls recorded. He pleaded guilty and went to prison. Who knows what he'll dream up there? Thought I'd add to the theft thing as my first comment on Reddit. My son bought an expensive bike, 900.00, registered it at the store where he bought it and registered it with our local police department. 6 months later it was stolen and he reported it. As advised, he called the police twice a month to ask if they found it. About 2 months later he saw two guys riding bikes and one of them was on his. He stopped them, talked to them, found out that an officer, the kid's uncle, had given him the bike. He talked the kid out of it by showing him the registration card. Guess what? The police then charged my son with grand theft. It got all the way to court where the prosecutor said their hands were tied right up to the moment when the judge came in. Only then would the prosecutor drop the case. My sister's car was broken into one winter. The cops followed the thief's footprints in the snow right to his house. I had a break in my house. We left the back door with the key inside and we have a cat flap. Turns out they could reach the key and open the door. Pretty clever. Unfortunately that was the only amount of intelligence they would show. They stole a multi-pack of Coca-Cola and that was it. I'm dead serious, they only stole Coke from my fridge. One of them left their wallet on my kitchen table, had all their ID and everything. It also happened to contain a £20 note which I promptly took before calling the police. The two guys were caught and I heard a few months ago they are serving 6 months in prison. I hope those cokes were worth it. Dang coke addicts. While on a vacation, my family and I went mini golfing. When we came back, apparently somebody broke into our car. The window was smashed and there was stuff thrown around the car. We had a very expensive GPS in there, a brand new camera, and several other expensive things. But the thief didn't take any of that. He took a bag of diapers. Just the diapers. We were all struck by this. When we called the police they were stunned as well. They caught the thief within the week. We got the diapers back. That's actually kind of sad. I left my iPod at a restaurant. Friendly's to be exact. Gotta love Friendly's, man. I was 12 at the time. We were in Orlando, Florida visiting Disney, SeaWorld, you know, the works. Anyway, so eating dinner, order some classic Friendly's ice cream. Fast forward to the hotel room. Oh crap, I left my iPod, so my ever so loving father goes to the Friendly's and asks for the iPod. The manager insists there is no iPod. My father demands to check the area in which we were eating with no success. On the way back, the manager and the waiter we had were talking. My dad walks up and asking one more time if they found an iPod. Manager: no. Waiter: yes. Turns out the manager tried to keep steal it. Long story short, the butthole got fired after a nice report to friendly company, and the waiter was rewarded and I got my iPod back. TLDR. Butthole Friendly's manager tried to steal a boy's iPod, foiled by waiter, then the manager got fired. You have been visited by the wealth rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.